Hello, welcome. I'm continuing with Bickley's Thunder Egg, as you can see here, by Bert Rhodes, and it's chapter 8. Chapter 8 is a rush corn husking. Bickley looked down at the finished picture on his desk. He was just reaching his foot across the aisle to nudge Pete's shoe when he realized that Miss Kitty was standing right behind him. Then he felt a pair of strong fingers fasten on his arm. It was such a hard pinch. Bickley felt sure that a piece of flesh had been pulled right off his arm, but at last the teacher let go. The tears stung Bickley's eyes, but he did not cry. He did not make a sound. He held onto his arm, for it ached more than anything. He pushed the picture into his desk, and he laid his head on his hands. He was roused from his sorrow by a poke with a foot, and Pete passed a note across the narrow space between them. Don't feel bad. I know how the house spelled H-O-U to fix, and then E-R. Signed, Pete. Then it was time to go home. The order was to put the books away and march out. Bickley took down his despised black coat, waited until most of the children had gone, and then he walked home with Tommy and the Whitley boys. Their talk was about the soldier who had come once again today. Mother says he's a good man, Tommy said. She says he has kind eyes. I wonder why he wants to see the house where his friend lived. If the soldier's already dead in the war, why would he want to see his house? Neil spoke his question out to the other two boys. Maybe he wants to buy the house, Bickley said. I don't think he's got any money to buy houses, Pete answered. His clothes are shabby and thin, and he looks hungry. He looks clean, though, Bickley defended Rolf. Even though his clothes are ragged and they're clean, Mother says you can always tell a gentleman, even if his shirts are ragged. Well, when he comes back next time, we'll have to ask him more about the house. I bet we can find it. Isn't it funny his friend didn't tell him where to look for it? Niels questioned. When they got back, they came to the gate of the Ross farmyard. Bickley and Tommy were walking backwards, swinging their dinner pails, waving and shouting at Pete and Niels as they went on to their place further up the road. On the front steps, the boys paused for just a minute. They sniffed the air. They could catch the fragrance of roast goose. They threw open the door and walked into the delicious perfume. The table was set. Mother had on her best tablecloth, and there was the bread she'd baked yesterday, with a pot of wild strawberry jam. And on the warming oven on the range, a large platter stood ready for the roast goose. Wonderful smells filled the little house and made Bickley a little dizzy. Mother came in with such a face of tenderness. Both boys threw her hands around her. Is the goose done? Did you make dressing? Is that onion I smell? Mother laughed, and her black eyes sparkled. Hurry now. Get some wood and cobs before dark. Get the chores done, and when John comes in, we'll all be ready to eat. The chores were never done with such cheerfulness or in such great haste. John came in from the barn, and the family gathered around the table, bowing reverently as Mother said grace. The goose was a magnificent bird. From some unknown place, Mother had gathered material necessary to make a fine stuffing. There was roasted potatoes in the oven, in the pan too, and baked apples came from the warming oven. A pitcher of milk from the cold cupboard in the shed made the meal perfect. Where did you get the potatoes? John asked as he filled his plate. Red Hog Smith came by and dropped a bushel off for us, Mother said. Why did he do that? John wondered. He said someone at the State Center gave him 50 cents and told him to leave us a bushel of his best potatoes. Who do you suppose that was, John? John wrinkled his face as much as he could. But the tremendous job he was doing on the goose. I can't think of who it might be, he said. There's so many kind people in the world, Mother said, looking around the three boys with laughing eyes. Next year we'll have our own potatoes. Yes. I wish we could save this bushel for seed, John said, making a face. I never tasted such good potatoes. They all knew why there was no potato patch this last year. It was because Daddy's illness and all the money they had to spend on his medication and doctors and the funeral. They're lucky, as John said, to get seed corn, and lucky to get the 20 acres planted. It was ready to husk now. In fact, it had been ready to husk before the October snowstorm, but that was pretty well gone now, and John would be looking to husk tomorrow. Bickley thought of all these things as he soberly stuffed himself with the roast goose. They realized Mother was talking again. Bickley's mind came back to the table and to the good supper. Red Hawk said the man gave him 50 cents for the potatoes with someone he'd never seen before. All at once, Bickley remembered the look on Ralph's face when he looked at the black coat. He felt almost sure Ralph must have been the one who had sent the potatoes, but he didn't say anything to Mother. The next morning, when Bickley and Tommy were dressing, they heard a rough voice in the kitchen. Bickley peeked out the open door, and it was Hank Collins. "I see your corn's ready to husk," Hank was saying with Mother and John. "Now I intend to protect my rights. I'll be putting 4 men in that field of yours in the first of the week, and their wages will be coming out of the price of that corn when it's sold." "You don't need to do that, Mr. Collins," John spoke. "I'll get the corn husked and marketed, and you'll be repaid the entire amount it brings." "Well, I don't trust you, John." Hank chewed on his cud of tobacco. "I've been awfully good to you folks, and then you go and let the house burn down. I don't trust you for that corn." "But, Mr. Collins, the wages of 4 men to pick corn would be $50 or more." "Reckon that'd be so, Miss Ross." Hank spat mouth of the tobacco onto the floor. "But as I was saying, I've been awfully good to you folks, and I'd be partaking of my rights." The old farmer turned and stepped into the snowy morning. John and Mother looked at each other. $50, John. We can't let him do that." Mother's face was red, and her eyes were very bright. "We won't do it either," John said, looking at the table that Mother had already filled bowls with mush. "We will pick it ourselves, we will. Even if we have to hang a lantern on the buckboard of that wagon, we will pick the corn this week." "Bick and Tom," John turned to the boys. "You fellows won't be going to school this day or any more days until that corn is in. You hear?" "I'll help too," Mother said. "We'll all work together, and we'll work hard and fast as we can. We'll fool Hank this time." As soon as breakfast was over, they all went to the cornfield. Tommy made a great show of driving the horses, even though they were well trained and would stop and start when spoken to, and they were accustomed to husking corn. Then Mother and John and Bickley twisted off the corn, husking them as they broke them free and tossed them into the wagon. They worked without talking. Every bit of strength and energy they had spent on the job before them. At mealtime, Mother brought out food and a hot drink. They worked until sundown. They filled the wagon. John drove it into the farmyard and shoveled the corn into the back room of the big barn that was used as a granary now that the real granary had become a house. By the end of the second day, Mother and John both looked distressed. They were not nearly half through, and there were only 2 more days before Sabbath. No one of the Ross family could work that day, not even to protect themselves from Hank Collins. On the 3rd day, Red Smith drove into the yard. "I see you folks are husking your corn," he said. "I'll give you a hand today and tomorrow, and John can help me back a couple days when I start on my field." They looked at Red Hog with unbelieving eyes. "God must have sent you," Mother said, and Bickley saw tears on her cheeks. Red Hawk Smith was the best corn picker in the county. There was no question now. They would finish on time. Still, Bickley trudged through the rows of corn, doing his best to keep with John and Mother, while Red Hog drove his own wagon along at the other end of the field. Bickley's shoes had been worn thin at the first of the week. Now they were completely broken. His bare toes, red frostbitten, picked through the ragged holes of the shoes. "That boy ought to have a new pair of shoes," Red Hog Smith remarked to John as they were shoveling lots of corn. "Corn's all mortgaged to Hank Collins, you know," John said. "How can we buy shoes?" "Now look here, John. There's about enough corn left in my wagon to make the price of a pair of shoes. Jump in, Bickley. I'll attend to this myself. If it won't be you, and it won't be your mother." Bickley, with a boost from John, was pushed aboard Red Hog's wagon, and they drove to State Center, where the corn was exchanged for a sturdy pair of shoes. Bickley's heart swelled with pride, not only because of the new shoes, but because a fine, strong man like Red Hog Smith had taken him into the shoe store and called him son and made him try on pair after pair of shoes until the very best ones could be found. It was almost like having a father. Then Red Hog drove him home, and he let Bickley out of the gate, and he ran into the house, eager to tell Mother and show her the new shoes. "I'm afraid it ain't right," she said, John. "Of course he did need the shoes, but the corn was mortgaged." Then John's face darkened. "Mother, Hank Collins doesn't know the difference between blood and money." He brought his hard fist down on the tabletop. "I won't have you speak to me again about this, ever." And Mother never did. The corn was sold When it was sold, it didn't quite bring out $100. When Hank came over on Monday morning to start his men on the field, John met him at the gate with the money in hand. The elevator man from State Center had set out Saturday night and paid cash for it. Bickley stood close to John, proud that he too had helped gather in the crop and save the extra $50. When Hank called and counted the money twice, then he climbed back into his wagon. He leaned over the side, whip in hand. Mind you, there is another $204.03. This gotta be in by New Year's or you are out. And that's the end of chapter 8.